Daf Nun Amud Aleph, right at the top. Omer Rabba, my time in the Rav. So we had machlokes previously, that we had machlokes when a person says that his shisa should be under the tree without identifying exactly where. He didn't identify exactly where under the tree. So Rav said that he's not been kind of shisa at all. He's relinquished his makam shisa where he's standing, and he's not been kind of anything under the tree. So he cannot go more than dalet amas from where he's standing. Shmuel says that he's kind of shisa under the tree, we just don't know where. But Rav says he's not kind of under the tree at all. So my time of the Rav, Mishum Deloy Messiah Asri, because he did not define the area. So if he didn't define the area, nothing has been defined, he's not kind of shisa. He hasn't defined where it is. A shisa has to be in a particular place. Under the tree is a generality. He hasn't said where it is, so he's not been kind of shisa. V'ikadam, as some say, Rabba, my time of the Rav, what's the reason? Anything that cannot take effect one after the other cannot take effect simultaneously either. So we view it over here when the person says that his shisa should be under the tree without identifying where under the tree. It's as if he said he wants every dalet amas area under the tree to be his makam shisa. Now, you clearly, once you have a designated area of dalet amas, of what this is your makam shisa, after you've designated one area, you can't designate an additional area to be your dalet amas. If this is your makam shisa, then that isn't. So it's ein b'zeh harzeh. It cannot be chal one after the other. So therefore, it can't be chal together simultaneously. It can't be chal either. So we view when he says that it's under the tree without identifying where under the tree, is that he wants every dalet amas area under the tree to be his makam shisa. Well, he can't designate one after the other, one dalet amas area after the other, so if he does it simultaneously, nothing's been chal. My beinayu, what's the difference between the two reasons? In a case where he says clearly he doesn't want every dalet amas area under the tree to be his makam shisa. So he wants 4 out of 8. For instance, if the area is 8, he says 4 out of the 8 he wants it to be. He doesn't know where, he doesn't identify where exactly, which 4, but only 4 out of the 8. So here he doesn't want all of the areas, it's only one. We just don't know which. So in that case, Rav would be Moed Shmuel, it's under the tree, it's a 4 amas area under the tree, but we don't know where, so it's a Chamer Gamo, we have to be Machmer. So therefore, if he says that case, Manda Amar Mishum Deloy Messiah Mas. Now, but according to the first reason that's given, that Rav mentioned in Rav, it's not going to help. It's not going to help because if it's not an identified area, you haven't been kind of makam shisa. So even if he says 4 out of 8, then it's not an identified area. So you're not be kind of shisa at all. And there will be no difference. He can't move beyond dalet amas from where he's standing. But according to the second reason, then over here, hi, ka'arba hama is dami. Da arba hama is kama. Over here, he's only saying 4 amas. He only wants 4 amas. We just don't know which 4 amas. So he's not saying he wants every 4 amas area. So if the reason is because we say it's not b'zach harzeh, it's not b'vas achas. He doesn't want every dalet amas area. He only wants one. We just don't know where. So here, Rav would be minded to Shmuel that it's a chamer gamo. But if, according to the reason is b'shum deloy Messiah Asrei, that the area has not been defined, he hasn't defined an area. Well, here also he hasn't defined an area. It would make no difference. He's not going to shvisa anywhere under the tree. Gufa. Omer Rabba called over she'ena b'zeh harzeh afilu b'vazachas einai. Eisei Abaya l'Rabba. Abaya asks a kasha on this principle. We learn the following. If in this brayso mentions Hamar b'v'maseh, if a person took more than 10% meiser. Meiser is supposed to be 10%. If he's marba, if he took more than 10% peirosa misukanim, he is misakin his produce, his what's left over after he removed this hafrosha is no longer tevel, it's chulin, he can eat it. But the Meiser has been ruined. So, for instance, if a person has 100 bushels worth of tefua, after he removed the truma, he took the truma, he's left with, let's say, 100, let's say, call it 100 pounds of tefua, which is tevel. It's still tevel because the meiser has to be removed from it. He has to be mafresh the meiser. Now he's supposed to take 10%. So he's supposed to take 10 pounds. And let's say he took 20. So when he removed the 20, he's already, certainly the meiser rather, has been removed. He did a hafrosha of the meiser. So the remainder, that 80 that's left, is now not tevel, it's chulin, and he can eat it. But the 20 that he's removed has in it meiser and tevel. Because you can't take more than 10% for meiser. Meiser has to be 10%. You can't take more than 10%. So the excess over here is not meiser. So what is it? It's what it was beforehand. It was tevel, and it's tevel now. So masraisa over mekul kolim, because he can't eat any of this because it has meiser and tevel mixed together. So the peiroisa mesukonim, the remainder after he separated the meiser, even though there's an excess, the remainder is chulin. He can eat it. But this excess over here has a mixture of meiser and tevel, so he can't eat it. Amai, why do we say that over here the meiser is chal? Lema kol she'ena b'zachar zeh afil b'vasachas eina. If this principle is correct, why don't we say just like if a person took 10% for meiser, he took it, he separated, he designated. Now the remainder is chulin. If he attempts now to take another 10%, b'zachar zeh, to take another 10%, it's meaningless. It's meaning you can't take meiser from chulin. You can take meiser from tevel. Something which meiser was already separated, the remainder, you can't take mafresh meiser from it anymore. It's considered chulin. It has no meiser capability. So why don't we say that kol she'ena b'zachar zeh, since you can't take 10% and then take after that another 10% from meiser, if he takes 20% b'vasachas, it should be not chal. The meiser shouldn't be chal at all. More answer, shiny meiser, is l'chatzoin. No, because meiser is l'chatzoin. For instance, if he takes a fruit and he says half of it should be meiser, so that half is meiser, the other half is not. So here, by taking 20%, is in effect what he's saying is that not 20% is meiser, not that it's all meiser, but 10%, half of each fruit or each kernel is meiser, and the other half is not meiser. So that's why it's muravim, because it's as if he's taking half of each one and designating half of each fruit or half of each kernel as meiser. So it's therefore meiser and tevel muravim, they're mixed together. So therefore, it's not a kasha on this principle. Frankly, more I'll ask you from the following case. Sorry, meiser behema de les lachatzoin. Meiser behema, you can't do lachatzoin. You can't designate half an animal as meiser behema. Meiser behema is the new vlodos that are born from his flock. It's a new flock that is born, so he has to designate every tent that comes out of the pen. He marks it with red dye, and it's designated as meiser behema. It has to be taken up to Yerushalayim, makrav as a korban, and the meat can be eaten. It has many similarities to a shlomim, to a korban shlomim, but there are many differences as well, such as smicha and tenufa and nesochim, etc. So it has similarities, but it's not mamish like a korban shlomim. You cannot designate half an animal for a meiser behemoth ha'asiri. It has to be a whole animal. And nevertheless, we say, V'omar Rabba said that Yotzu Shnayim Ba'asiri, if two animals came out at the same time, simultaneously, he designated, one came out of the pen, one newborn came out of the pen, he called one, then the second one, 2, 3, 4, then by the 10th one, two came out at the same time, he designated both as number 10, so we say that it's the 10th and the 11th are mixed up. We don't know which is the 10th, we don't know which is the meiser, which one is the 11th. The 11th would be considered to be a shlomim. The 11th would be considered a shlomim, as we'll see shortly, that if a person designates, he calls something which is not the 10th, he calls it the 10th. If he calls the 9th or the 11th, if he calls it the 10th, then it has its kodesh as a shlomim. Now over here, they both came out as number 10. He both called it number 10. One is the meiser and one is the shlomim. We don't know which is which. But why don't we say over here, if this principle is correct, kol sheina b'zeh achar zeh, once he designated an animal to be the 10th, so that's the meiser. You can't make another meiser. So why don't we say, if he is eina b'zeh achar zeh, then b'vasachas is einai. It should not be chal simultaneously either. Where it says no, it's not a kasha because over here, in a certain way, it is chal b'zeh achar zeh. Shiny meiser behema is different to isa b'zeh achar zeh b'tos, because if a person made a mistake, it is chal. This we learned in the Mishnah. If it was the 9th one that came out of the pen, and mistakenly he called it 10. And then the 10th one came out, and he then called it the 9th. And then the 11th he called the 10th. Then, after he called the 10th the 9th, then he called the 11th the 10th. They're all kodesh. They're all kodesh. The one that's really 10, the one that's number 10, in reality that's 10 is a meiser. The other two are shlomim. But you could be makadosh if it's betos. If he made a mistake, if he was mistaken, then it is kodesh b'zeh achar zeh. So therefore, b'vasacha, simultaneously, it also is kodesh, and one is the meiser, and one is the shlomim. Frank the Gemara, another kash on this principle of right taida, the less of a tos. A person, he brings a korban taida if he is saved from a sickness or is released from prison, etc., or a dangerous situation. He was traveling, he brings a korban taida, and he brings with it 40 loaves. And so 4 of them go to the kohen, and the rest can be eaten. Now, right taida, the less of a tos. In a case of mistake, if he does, even if it's a mistake, he can't be makdish more than 40 loaves. So if he says 40 loaves should be for, he wants to be makdish it for the korban taida, and then he wants to bring another 40, the second 40, it's not kaddish, it's meaningless. And whether he made a mistake or not, the second 40 is not kaddish. It's less of it, less of b'zeh achar zeh. And even if he did not make a mistake, it's less of b'zeh achar zeh. If he wants 40, and he wants another 40 to be Kaddish, it's not Kaddish. Ve'itmar, however, we learned, is if you meshech the korban, the animal, and you shech it, I'm bringing 80 loaves, Chizki Amar Kacho Allah Memitech Shmainim. He said 40 out of the 80 are Kaddish. And Rav Yochanan Amar Lekacho Allah Memitech Shmainim. Rav Yochanan says no, 40 are not Kaddish. You can't have 80 loaves for a korban taida, so nothing is Kaddish. But Chizkiah says 40 out of the 80 are Kaddish. So why don't we say Kol She'ena B'zeh achar zeh? You can't do 40 and then another 40. So if he does 80, it should not be Kaddish. More answers. He says no. This is not the way you're assuming it. This case is not where he wants 80. If a person says he says if 40 out of the 80 should be Kaddish, if that's his intent and that's what he says, the Kaddish. Since he only wants to be Makdish 40 are Kaddish. We just don't know which, but 40 are Kaddish. So everyone agrees there's no Machlokes that is Kaddish. The Kaddish. If he says but if he says no, I want 80, and if I can't get 80, I don't even want to be Makdish 40, then everyone agrees it can't be Kaddish, because you can't be Makdish 80. You can't do 40 and then 40, and you can't be Makdish 80 either. So nothing is Kaddish, because we do apply the principle of Kol She'ena B'zeh achar zeh b'vasach zeinai. So what's the machlokes? Ki plegi b'stama. where he didn't specify it. So the question is over here, the machlokes is what is his intent? Meaning the way we're learning it now is they both agree, kol sheina b'zachar zeba v'asachar seina. The issue over here is what is the person's intent when he says 80? Mar savelach rais kamachavin. So Chizkiah holds, he doesn't want 80. He's saying 80 because in case 40 are lost, then there should be a chrais, it should be a backup. He wants it to be as a backup, an insurance, in case 40 are lost. So therefore, all he's really being makdish is 40 out of the 80. So therefore, 40 are kodesh. It's as if he said 40 out of the 80. Well, tonight, I see him, and he's bringing it on condition. He's bringing on condition that this other 40 that should be kodesh, if 40 is lost, then there should be a backup. So therefore, it's kodesh. Umar Savar l'Koren Gol Komachavin. So, and Mar Savar and Rav Yochanan holds, no, his intent is for 80, and you can't do 80. So nothing is kodesh. So really, they both hold of this principle. It's not a kasha at all on this principle.